Alright, so we finally got there, to the point that we're about to print. Congratulations, this next part takes a little trying, but you'll get it done. The first thing you'll need is your carved plate. You'll need a brayer. I have 2 different brayers. You'll need some ink. If you don't have ink, you can use acrylic paint or oil-based paint. You'll need a spoon. I like to have a plexiglass plate. I took this one from an old frame that I'm not using. And then you'll need paper. As far as your ink goes, if you don't have it, again, you can use acrylic, but you need to make sure that the acrylic doesn't dry. So any retardant mediums will help. Other than that, we're going to get started. But first, we need to talk about inking up. Sound levels are a good way to understand inking levels. So I've included the audio of an inking session. What we are listening for is the level of tackiness. What helps me remember is the idea of a snake. You don't want it so quiet that you don't know where the snake is and it sneaks up on you. You don't want it so loud that it's right in your ear and it's biting you. You're looking for a nice audible hiss that you can identify and replicate again and again for your future prints. This is a good moment to talk about how to charge and ink your brayer. You'll need to roll inside the ink pile back and forth, and at the end or beginning of that run, you'll need to flick your brayer to randomize where the roller will land next. If you do not do this flick, you will only end up inking or charging your brayer in a small portion. So remember to give it a flick at the end or beginning, and over time your entire roller will be inked in a random way to even out the ink slab. That's what we call that patch of ink on the plexi. Also, try not to roll the ink slab larger than your brayer in any direction. It wastes inks and increases the amount of time you have to clean up. ready to ink the plate, I usually recommend keeping in your head some routine, pattern, or a song. For me, it's usually 1, 2, 3, 4, turn, 1, 2, 3, 4, turn, charge, 1, 2, 3, 4, turn, 1, 2, 3, 4, turn, charge. It's a little bit random on this particular plate as I don't want to ink the bottom portion and ink up my chatter. In that pattern where I said 1, 2, 3, 4, turn, it's me turning the plate to ink it from a different direction. This just makes sure that everything has an even coating in case there is any hills or bumps or valleys that are in the plate at the beginning that I didn't carve, any depressions. This allows me to ink them up, and it also evens out the amount of ink that's on the plate. When I say 1, 2, 3, 4, turn, charge is dipping your brayer back into the ink slab to give it a fresh coating of ink. Each time you roll it on the plate, it's taking a little bit ink from the brayer, and as you continue to roll, you might not be inking at all. You might just be evening out a very thin amount of ink. When it's time to print, I like to put the paper on top of the tacky ink, and that grabs the paper and puts it in place. But to make sure that that connection holds, I like to keep my hand on the paper at all times, and then apply a circular motion all over the back of the plate. Over time, you'll learn where your plate is and how much pressure you need. But if you're unsure, remember that you can peek and look under a corner, and if that spot isn't inked well, it usually is a good indicator of how the whole thing might be inking. Sometimes it'll take you multiple passes and even multiple utensils to get the proper inking that you want. I like to use a metal spoon, but my favorite tool is to use a hard wooden spatula. It adds a nice scraping motion and hard, even pressure that results in a good print. Although the spoon is nice, it's so small, and the point of the concave is even smaller, which means that you're not getting to print everything evenly, just at the point of that concave. That being said, it's still able to pull a semi-decent print. With a little bit more time and a little bit more inking, this print would have come out a lot better. But right now, I'm going to ink up another plate. So I'm going to go through the same motions, and I'm going to change the utensil and see if I get a different result. Again, try to play around with your utensils, switching them to other things, burnishers, and etc. until you find the tool that works for you. Don't forget that just because your print isn't perfect doesn't mean that you can't get it to the perfection you seek. Remember that pressure is one culprit, but also your ink level could be another culprit. I generally like to build up a lot of thin layers to get the inking that I want, but some people go a little bit thicker. What they have to run into or compete with is the idea that that extra thick layer of ink might fill in all of your lines. It's a balance. It'll take you multiple tries to figure out the right one, but once you do, you'll be good. For this print, I used one of my clean brayers to get a first precursor roll, and then used a spoon to get some finesse or clarity in areas that I felt were lacking. Again, it is a combination of using multiple materials, utensils, or different techniques until you find the right one that works for you. Also keep in mind, printing on a soft table or a soft surface isn't as beneficial as printing on a hard surface. So we ended up with some decent prints. Both of them have what's called a little salt, or what I refer to as salt, these little grainy white specular things. And then if you look at the bottom of this one, you'll see that it has chatter. So that little black there in the corner that wasn't inked up in my plate, it got inked in a small way when I was rolling it up, and then it printed. This is chatter. Again, it's expected in linoleum, but if you want to get rid of it, there are a couple of solutions. Right now I have a registration sheet of paper. It's a registration guide that's made specifically for this print. To make one, you just need to trace your linoleum plate first and then create a border around that. Usually 1 inch on all sides is good, but traditionally we like to keep it a little bottom weighted. So what I like to do normally is to make 1 inch on the left, right, and top, and then double that on the bottom. So 1, 1, 1, and then 2 inches, and sometimes I go as little as 1.5 inches on the bottom and 1 inch on all the other sides. You don't have to follow that, but it's usually a good guide. This will help me register the prints over and over again. So I'll ink up my linoleum plate, put it in the center, and then I'll hold my paper in that corner, push it down, and print. Alright, so we got a much cleaner print this time. Again, that wooden spatula comes in handy for my way of printing. You might find something else works for you. And plus there's also tools such as barens that are made for this specific thing. Lastly, we're going to talk about how to keep chatter from happening on your print. I'm just taking a little plastic tape, going around the areas where I don't want chatter to be. This could also be replaced with contact paper if that's what you have available, but again, showing you some of the ways to do this if you don't have all the necessary supplies. What you're going to do is tape all the parts you don't want to ink up, and then you're going to burnish them in so that they stay in place. After that, you'll cut the edges with the box cutter, utility knife, or X-Acto knife, and then you'll also use a smaller knife to go around the edges of the image just to make sure you don't accidentally tape off a part that's supposed to be inked up. After that, you'll ink it up as normally, but before you print, you'll go ahead and wipe that plastic tape off. It should resist all of the ink and wipe pretty clean. You do not need to rip the tape off the thing. Just wiping it with a baby wipe or a paper towel will help clean it up and prevent chatter from happening on your page. One last thing is that I made a registration jig. I'll show you in a separate video how to make it, and it's just using a couple of mat boards and cardboard things that I left over from tracing paper. Other than that, you should have a pretty good job printing using one or a combination of all of these techniques. Remember, if you're not able to get a good print the first time, try it again, try inking a little bit more, try inking a little bit less, and try more or less pressure.